The room went completely silent. Hundreds of people, executives, investors, staff, all of them staring at me. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't accused anyone. I'd only asked one question. If someone looks insignificant to you, do they stop being worthy of respect? No one answered. That's when I knew the event was already over. But this didn't start here. It started outside the hotel. The slap came out of nowhere. 1 second, I was standing near the hotel entrance, checking my phone, waiting for a car. The next, her palm hit my face so hard my head snapped to the side. People stopped. Someone laughed nervously. "What is wrong with you?" she snapped, her eyes burning with disgust. "Do you know how much this event costs? You can't just stand here looking like that." Like that. I tasted blood and metal. My cheek burned, but I didn't touch it. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction. She was dressed perfectly. Expensive coat, heels that clicked with confidence. A badge hung from her neck with the logo of the company hosting the event. She looked important, powerful, untouchable. I looked ordinary. Old jacket, scuffed shoes, no badge, no entourage. "You people are always the same," she continued, lowering her voice but not her cruelty. "Trying to sneak into places you don't belong. This is a private event. Go beg somewhere else." I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Not because I was scared, because I realized something in that moment. She had already decided who I was. Around us, people watched but stayed still. No one stepped in. No one asked if I was okay. A security guard glanced over, saw her badge, and looked away. She straightened her coat like the slap was nothing more than brushing dust off her sleeve. "Next time," she said coldly, "know your place." Then she turned and walked inside the hotel, heels clicking across marble like a victory march. I stood there for a few seconds longer than necessary. Long enough for the sting to fade into a dull throb. Long enough for the whispers to start. "Did you see that? He must have done something. Why was he even there?" I bent down, picked up my phone from the ground, and slipped it back into my pocket. My hands were steady. My breathing was calm. I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. Across the street, a black car waited with the engine running. Not a taxi. Not a rideshare. The driver stepped out the moment he saw me and opened the rear door without saying a word. As I walked toward it, I caught a glimpse of the hotel's glass doors reflecting the city lights. Somewhere inside, she was probably talking about professionalism, about values, about respect. I touched my cheek once gently. She has no idea, I thought as I got into the car, what kind of event this really is. And she definitely had no idea where I was going next. I've learned that people trust appearances more than truth. If you look important, they listen. If you look ordinary, they decide for you. That's something I understood a long time ago. I don't dress to impress anymore. I stopped doing that years back, after I realized how loud money makes people and how quiet real control can be. I live simply. I travel alone. I don't wear badges unless I have to. Most days, I look like someone you'd pass without a second thought. That woman at the hotel didn't invent her opinion of me. She borrowed it from the world. Years ago, I used to be visible. My name was on documents, on stages, in rooms where deals were decided before lunch. I helped build companies that other people later took credit for. I negotiated contracts that changed lives I'd never meet. And when things went wrong, when egos got bigger than ethics, I stepped away instead of fighting publicly. I didn't disappear. I just stopped announcing myself. The company hosting that event was one of my quiet investments. Not directly, not officially. A layered structure, shared influence, advisory power that never shows up on a name tag. They were hosting an international launch. Big money, big sponsors, big promises, and one final approval. Mine. They didn't advertise that part. Only a handful of executives knew. The rest thought success depended on presentations, charm, confidence, on selling an image. That woman worked there. I'd seen her name in internal reports. Fast climber, aggressive, strong personality, as one memo put it. The kind of employee leadership loved when results mattered more than conduct. This event was her moment. She didn't know that, but I did. That morning, I'd arrived early. Too early for crowds. I wanted to walk, to observe. I like seeing how people behave when they think no one important is watching. It tells you more than any resume. That's when she saw me. Not as a person, as an obstacle. The irony sat heavy in my chest as the car pulled away from the hotel. The driver didn't ask questions. He never did. just nodded once in the rearview mirror and merged into traffic. On most days like this, I'd already be airborne by now. In a jet, no one tracks. Headed somewhere no one announces. That's how my life usually moves. Quiet exits, private corridors, decisions made far from stages and spotlights. But today wasn't one of those days. Today, I stayed. Because sometimes power doesn't leave. It waits. People think betrayal has to come from someone close. A spouse, a child, a friend. But there's another kind that cuts just as deep. The kind where a stranger decides your worth in a single glance and feels entitled to punish you for not fitting their picture. I've been underestimated before. More times than I can count. I've had doors closed softly and slammed hard. I've been spoken over, ignored, dismissed. But that slap wasn't just arrogance. It was permission. Permission she felt the world had given her to erase me. By the time the moment arrived, I felt none of the tension people usually carry into moments of importance. The venue was already alive when I arrived. Bright lights, music echoing through glass and steel, staff rushing with clipboards and headsets, pretending everything was under control. I entered through a side door, reserved for special guests, though the sign said nothing of the sort. A few people recognized me immediately. Their posture changed. Their voices softened. Others didn't notice at all. They brushed past me with hurried apologies, eyes fixed on screens and schedules. I liked that. It showed me exactly who they were. As I took my seat near the front, I overheard two event managers whispering behind me. "She's nervous," one said. "She should be," the other replied. "This presentation decides everything." They said her name. The woman. The same voice, the same confidence, the same entitlement that had cracked against my cheek hours earlier. I didn't turn around. Instead, I watched the stage fill with lights and logos, watched executives settle into their seats, watched investors lean forward with interest. The room buzzed with expectation. And then she walked out. Perfect posture, sharp smile, tailored suit that screamed authority. Applause followed her like it was automatic. She accepted it with ease, like she deserved every second of it. I felt a strange disconnect watching her. Not anger, not satisfaction. Recognition. She spoke well. Clear voice, polished slides, big promises wrapped in rehearsed sincerity. She talked about growth, about responsibility, about how the company valued professionalism above all else. Professionalism. The word hovered in the air like a bad joke. As she spoke, my mind drifted back to the sidewalk, to the way her eyes had flicked over me, to how quickly she'd decided I wasn't worth basic decency. That was the betrayal. Not the slap. The assumption that dignity is something you earn by looking the part. I noticed subtle shifts in the room as the presentation went on. Some executives nodded along. Others glanced down at their notes, frowning slightly. They weren't reacting to her words. They were waiting. She reached the final slide, the one meant to seal the deal. Her smile widened. She looked confident now, victorious. "Thank you for your time," she said smoothly. "We believe this partnership represents not just profit, but shared values." Shared values. That was my cue. I stood up. The sound of my chair moving was small, but it carried. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. A ripple of confusion passed through the room. She froze. For a brief second, her eyes met mine. I saw it instantly. The flicker of recognition, the sharp inhale she tried to hide. Her confidence cracked. Not fully. Not yet. But enough. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I didn't point. I simply spoke. "You mentioned values," I said calmly. "I'd like to understand how your company defines them." The room went silent. She stared at me, lips parting slightly. I could see her trying to place me, trying to reconcile the man in front of her with the one she'd struck and dismissed like dirt. She started, then stopped, regained composure. "Of course, we define values as respect, integrity, and accountability." I nodded slowly. "Interesting," I said, "because earlier today I experienced something very different from one of your senior representatives." A murmur moved through the crowd. Her face drained of color. I didn't name her. I didn't have to. The betrayal wasn't mine alone anymore. It was unfolding in front of everyone who mattered. For a moment, no one spoke. Not the executives, not the organizers, not even her. She stood there under the lights, one hand gripping the presentation remote a little too tightly. I could see the calculation behind her eyes, the mental scramble. She was trying to decide whether to deny, deflect, or attack. That pause told me everything. "I'm not here to embarrass anyone," I continued calmly. I'm here because this partnership matters. And when something matters, how people behave under pressure becomes relevant. A few heads turned toward her. Not accusing yet, just curious. She swallowed, forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm not sure what you're referring to, she said. Her voice was steady, but her shoulders were stiff. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. I nodded again, slow and deliberate. That's possible, I said. Misunderstandings happen when we stop seeing people clearly. I let that sit. Then I added, earlier today outside this very venue, I was struck in public by a senior member of your team for standing in the wrong place. No conversation, no warning, just judgment. The room inhaled as one. Someone shifted in their seat. Someone else whispered her name. She didn't look at me anymore. She stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. I chose not to react then, I went on. Not because it didn't matter, but because reactions don't reveal truth. Patterns do. I glanced briefly toward the executive row. They were paying attention now, fully. This company asked me to assess alignment, I said. Financially, strategically, ethically. Numbers are easy. Ethics are not. The coordinator near the stage looked pale. He knew what was coming. I wasn't angry. That was the part people found unsettling. There was no heat in my voice. No need to dominate. Just clarity. I'd like to ask a simple question, I said, looking back at her. If someone looks insignificant to you, do they stop being worthy of respect? Her eyes finally snapped to mine. For a second, the woman who slapped me was gone. What remained was someone cornered by her own reflection. That's not fair, she said quickly. You don't know the context. Security risks. I raised my hand gently. No, I said. I know the context. I was there. Silence again. Then something shifted inside me. A small but important decision. This wasn't about punishment. It was about truth. I won't be proceeding with the partnership as presented, I said evenly. Gasps this time. No whispers. Full reactions. Her breath caught audibly. That doesn't mean the door is closed forever, I added, but it does mean accountability needs to happen first. Real accountability. Not PR. The lead executive leaned forward. We weren't aware of any incident, he said carefully, but we take this seriously. I'm sure you do, I replied. That's why I'm bringing it to you directly. I turned back to her one last time. This wasn't personal, I said, until you made it personal. Her hands were shaking now. She tried to hide it by placing them behind her back. I didn't wait for an apology. I didn't demand one. I sat back down. The room erupted into low, tense conversation. Phones came out. Assistants whispered urgently into headsets. The presentation slides behind her looked absurd now. Hollow. She stepped off the stage without another word. As the meeting adjourned early, people approached me quietly. Thanked me, apologized, asked for time. I accepted none of it in the moment. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and walked toward the exit the same way I'd entered, unnoticed by some, watched closely by others. Outside, the air felt different, lighter. I didn't leave the building right away. I stopped in the corridor just beyond the main hall, where the noise faded into a low hum of distant voices and hurried footsteps. From there, I could hear everything unfolding without being part of the spectacle. That's where the real collapse began. Her voice was the first to break through the walls. Not loud, not screaming, sharp, controlled panic wrapped in professionalism. This is being blown out of proportion, she said. We can clarify this. I can explain. An executive replied, calm but firm. You already had your chance. Another voice joined in. HR, legal. The words liability and public conduct floated down the hall like smoke. I leaned against the wall, hands in my pockets, listening without satisfaction. There was no triumph in this, just inevitability. A few minutes later, the lead executive stepped out and spotted me. He hesitated, then approached slowly like someone stepping onto thin ice. May we speak? He asked. I nodded once. We stood there in the quiet corridor while the event unraveled behind closed doors. I want to be clear, he said. We don't condone behavior like that, at all. I know, I replied. If you did, I wouldn't be here. He exhaled. She never mentioned any incident. She wouldn't, I said calmly. People like that rarely do. He studied me carefully now. Not assessing power, assessing judgment. What would it take to move forward, he asked. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked past him, toward the doors that led back into the hall. Through the frosted glass, I could see movement. Shadows pacing, hands gesturing, a career trying to negotiate its way out of reality. This isn't about conditions, I said finally. It's about standards. He nodded slowly. We'll handle it, he said. Properly. I trust that you will, I replied. But understand something. What happened today didn't begin on that sidewalk. It began long before. This is just the first time it had an audience that mattered. His eyes dropped for a moment, then he straightened, understood. We shook hands. Firm, professional, final. As he walked away, I felt a strange quiet settle in my chest. Not relief, not closure, alignment. I turned toward the exit. That's when I saw her. She stood near the glass doors now, separated from the room she had commanded an hour earlier. Her badge was gone. Her suit still immaculate, but it hung differently on her shoulders, like armor that no longer fit. Our eyes met. She hesitated, then stepped toward me, slowly, carefully, like approaching something dangerous. I didn't know, she said quickly. If I had known who you were. I stopped walking. That's the problem, I said. She flinched. I was under pressure, she continued, words tumbling over each other now. Security is tight. People try to sneak in. I thought. You thought, I repeated, and you acted. She swallowed. Her voice dropped. I'm sorry. It was the first time she'd said it. I looked at her then, really looked. Not at the suit. Not at the ambition, at the fear underneath. I believe you're sorry now, I said. But that's not the same as being respectful then. Her eyes filled, not with tears, with something worse. Understanding. I can fix this, she said desperately. I can apologize publicly. I can? No, I said gently. You can learn from it. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I stepped past her and pushed open the doors. Outside, the city breathed like nothing had happened. Cars moved, people laughed, someone argued on the phone. Life went on, indifferent to the rise and fall happening inside that building. The driver opened the door for me. As I sat down, I felt the last of the tension leave my body. Not because she'd fallen, but because I hadn't needed to raise my voice, my hand, or my status to make truth visible. The car pulled away from the curb. In the rearview mirror, I saw the glass doors one last time. I saw her standing there alone now, framed by reflections she couldn't escape. I didn't think about her much after that day, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't need to. The car dropped me off where it always does. Quiet street. No cameras. No waiting crowd, just another place where I could step out and be invisible again. The driver nodded once before pulling away. No questions, no commentary. That night, I went home and cooked for myself. Simple food, familiar routine. I touched my cheek once while washing my face. There was no mark left, no bruise, nothing to show for what had happened. And yet something had changed. The following week, reports came in, official ones, carefully worded. The company had launched an internal review. Policies were updated, training mandated. Her name appeared once, briefly, and then disappeared entirely from the chain of communication. She didn't reach out again. That told me enough. People often imagine justice as something loud, a courtroom, a crowd, someone brought to their knees. But real justice is quieter. It corrects direction. It doesn't ask for applause. I kept my distance. I always do. Another representative took over discussions months later. Different tone, different energy. We eventually moved forward on new terms with new people. The work continued. Life always does. Every now and then I think back to the moment outside the hotel, to how easily a hand was raised, how quickly a judgment was made, and I wonder how many times she had done that before, how many times no one had been there to stand up, not in anger, but in truth. I don't wonder where she is now. That's not my concern. What stays with me is something else. Power doesn't reveal itself in luxury or confidence or titles hanging from a lanyard. Power shows itself in restraint, in how you treat someone when you believe they have nothing to offer you. As for me, I went back to living the way I always have. Quietly, intentionally, letting people underestimate me if they need to, letting the world speak before I ever do. I don't correct first impressions anymore. I let them play out. If this story made you think differently about power, respect, or first impressions, take a second to support it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes silence is weakness. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been underestimated and later proven right?